Hello everyone, today we're going to explain how to argue and how we can develop different kinds of arguments in our daily lives.
So basically we want to teach is how ancient philosophers go through arguments by a kind of debate, conversations for getting to a conclusion. Firstly, it's important to highlight that we are rational people. This means we're guided by the logical part. When Aristotle defined us, we are rational animals. This differs us from the other species because we have a kind of character. We can have arguments, we can discuss with other people. We try to persuade them.
A tripartite soul, what you might think of as yourself or your psyche, divided into three parts. First, there's the rational or logical part of the soul, which represents cool reason. This is the aspect of yourself that seeks the truth and is swayed by facts and arguments. When you decide to stop eating bacon for 2 meals a day because, as delicious as it is, it's bad for you, then you make that decision with the guidance of the rational part of your soul. But then there's the spirited aspect, often described as the emotional part of the self, although that doesn't really quite capture it. The spirited soul isn't just about feeling, it's also about how your feelings fuel your actions. It's the part that responds in righteous anger at injustice, the part that drives your ambition and calls upon you to protect others. It gives you a sense of honor and duty and is swayed by sympathy. So if you decide to stop eating bacon because you just finished reading Charlotte's Web and now you're in love with Wilbur, then you're being guided by the spirited part of your soul. But we share the next part of our soul with other animals, be they pig or moose or aardvark. The appetitive part is what drives you to eat, have sex, and protect yourself from danger. It is swayed by temptations that are carnal and visceral. So at those times when you go ahead and just eat all the bacon because it just smells so dang good, the appetitive aspect of your soul is in control.
So, from this system, Plato stated that those people that use the logical part were better than those that use the emotional and the appetitive one. This doesn't mean that if you use those, you are less important. It just means that you are guided by other type of souls. So, here is the part when Plato states that beliefs will always have to be guided or backed up by a reason. And this is when we call a reason, or by the other name, a premise.
Philosophy isn't just a shouting match. Instead, philosophers maintain that your beliefs should always be backed up by reasons, which we call premises. Premises form the structure of your argument. They offer evidence for your belief, and you can have as many premises as you like as long as they support your conclusion, which is the thing that you actually believe.
So now, to define what is an argument, we can tell that is when you persuade someone to believe or do something. What happened with this argument? The argument have a structure that is based by premises. These premises will guide you into a conclusion. How we have said, there are different kinds of arguments. That is practically the deduction, induction, and abduction.
Talking about different types of arguments, the first one is named the deductive one. This one is correct, or you get to a correct conclusion when the two premises that comes from a more general to a specific one are true. So an example of this deductive argument is when you have as premise 1, the dog is always barking at the door. Premise 2, that is the more specific one, and the dog didn't bark. As conclusion, you can say that as follow-up that the two premises are correct, the conclusion will also be valid and say that there's no one at the door.
Now we are going to talk about the induction method. This method is basically take our past experiences and predict a future. So this method is practically based in probability. So many of the times this practically is going to be wrong. So when we use an inductive method, it's without conscience practically because we are trying to make an option of a future that could be wrong or right. So for example, I'm going to say mostly of the days I eat an apple, and another premise is mostly of the apples are reds. So the conclusion will be the next apple I'm going to eat will be red. So this spread is a kind of prediction. But what happened with this inductive method? If we know that apples can be red, but they are also green. So what I don't know is that maybe I'm going to eat this green apple. Okay, finally we want to explain what is the abduction method. These kind of arguments are practically to infer what is going to happen. So we pass through a series of premises that will get us in a kind of conclusion. So by these premises we practically use an infer method so we can get into the most valid conclusion. So these kind of arguments are mostly known as the ones the doctors or psychologists, someone that try to define a sickness. So an example should be like I'm in my house and I go downstairs and I go into the kitchen. I found a plate with a breakfast. So I know that my wife she wakes uh, after me, and I know that my housekeeper is on the house. So I have two conclusions. My wife could make me the breakfast or was the housekeeper. So finally I know at least that my wife she goes early because she has a problem in his work. So the most probable situation will be that my housekeeper make me my breakfast.